I wonder whether this is to do with the fact that we've got a male and female Prime Minister, right? Candidate. I wonder if we're going to have a female Prime Minister. And I don't think it's going to go so well. But this is very antagonistic. And it's almost like this energy that's stuck in the past. And that's what's going to provoke this sort of outcry. In my world predictions video, I saw a lot of chaos around the UK which I thought was connected to the Tory leadership contest and the appointment of a new British Prime Minister. I knew that something very significant was going to happen in the country I called home. Thank goodness, I did not realise what it was going to be. At the end of this video, I gave the following message. The next video I'm going to do, guys, is I did an ITC session recently and Jonathan made a few predictions of his own, and this is kind of doubled down on a few things he's made in the past. So the next video I'm going to be showing some predictions that have come through my ITC sessions. After recent events, I thought it wise to hold off on that video until a later date, as I feel the implications it gives would be inappropriate at this time. I also thought long and hard on if I should release this video. However, due to the profound historical nature surrounding the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, I thought the words shared here may help others. This video contains a spirit box session where I asked guides, angels and those we have communicated with over the past 9 years if they had any healing words for those affected by this tragic loss. Hello spiritual worlds, Jared here back for another video, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't know whether or not making this video was a good idea, and I felt quite compelled to, but I wanted to do it in a respectful manner because I wanted to bring through, I want to use the tools that we've been given through ITC and through the work that we've done, or I've done over the last sort of 8 to 10 years, to see if I could bring through something that could add maybe a few words of wisdom or something that could benefit people who watch this video who have been affected by um, the recent passing of Queen Elizabeth II. And I'll be honest with you guys, I am not a royalist. I'm probably more like a Welsh nationalist, if I'm honest. I hold a lot of controversial views. I'm not really much of a Welsh nationalist either. I just hold really controversial views about sort of the institution of monarchy. But I will be honest, like there are certain times in my life where it's kind of been a part of like my family, my sort of like my family's views, traditions, that sort of thing growing up. And it's like when the news broke, I was with my mother and we were down my nan's house, and my nan happened to be out at the time. But we seen that the news had broke that the Queen was in ill health, and I had this feeling from spirit as if like she'd either gone and they haven't announced it, or she's not going to last the night. And I'll be honest with you, I felt quite emotional, and I was really like, I couldn't understand why I was feeling emotional because it's not really something that I care deeply or passionately about. But it didn't go away for like a couple of days, and I was watching the news, watching other media, looking at social media, and the same sort of thing, and other people were saying the same thing. Doesn't matter what your views are on the royal family or the monarchy or the institution, the person felt like a great loss. It felt like we have. There was something about our culture that had been lost. There was something about our identity that had been lost. And it's always been there. The Queen's head's on our money. It's on our on our basically every institution of government. It's on everything, right? And it's like, I don't know. It just felt like there was this kind of loss. So I wanted to see what would come through if I did a session on it. I didn't want to contact the person herself or anything else like that. I didn't want to be like so disrespectful. I wanted to see what Spirit had to say about it, right? How they viewed it from their perspective, because they can view things from my understanding of spirit, and when people work, with spirituality, guides, angels, that sort of thing, they see things from a different sort of point of view, a different perspective, and I wanted to see like how they interpreted this landmark event. And the first thing, I just literally switched the app on. This happens to me a lot. I can literally just switch the app on. I'm setting up. I'm doing like a sound check, and it'll just come through with like, you'll just start speaking, and I'll show you the clip now. Oh. So in that clip, he's encouraging me. He said his name is John, which is my brother. Which he knows. I always ask him to identify himself first. I felt that it was my brother's energy coming through, although he was speaking quite profoundly, to be perfectly honest with you. And my brother wasn't much of a monarchist when he was alive. Before he passed, like 20, how long ago now? Christ, 22 years ago. Um, but he said it was historical, and he was like, there's been a couple of events since COVID that have been massively historical that we will look back on this time as being game changers. And I think, obviously, COVID, the lockdown, um, there's a lot that's going to come up about that. That's going to be discussed, debated, and talked about and revealed over the coming years. The death of Prince Philip, the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis that we're going through right now, and obviously now the death of Her Majesty the Queen, and the ascension of a new monarch. So I basically gave Spirit the floor. I said, I don't want to ask any questions. I just want to see, this is the intent. The intent was to give, people um, words of wisdom, healing, love, respect, and just reflection. And this video, I'm not going to talk about any of the sort of negative sides of the royal family, because that is a debate that we will probably have later on down the line. There are going to be issues now coming up from this that is being talked about in all sorts of levels of conversation, whether it's online, in the media, etc., etc., right? But I think, let's at least give it till after the funeral before we start having these discussions, and give the people who want to mourn a chance and the respect to mourn. And to be honest, I feel like I think that would be a good idea to have that time anyway, because it's good for us to have that reflection, regardless of what we think about the institution itself. Reflection on the person. What did the person contribute? So this is what the first bit of what was said. And I wanted to ask about the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. I want to see if there's any words of wisdom that come through, any spirits or beings or guides or angels that want to perhaps share something about the changing of the tides that we are now experiencing, or share something about the grief people are experiencing. Basically, yeah, I'm going to open the floor and I want to see what comes through. So, here goes. So he talks about a friend moving onward, and a lot of people thought of Her Majesty the Queen in that kind of way. That's the way millions of people in the UK and around the world related to the person. And Spirit are not saying look at like the institution, not look at the different things that happened. They're saying look at the person, look at the story of that person's life, and put yourself in the position of the hand they were dealt. Now, it's easy enough for us to sort of say to ourselves, right, well, you know, they had palaces, they had all the money they could ever want, etc. But if you actually look at the nuances of that person's life, being 10 years old and being put into a position where you're going to be representative of not just one country but several, and that has happened to you because of a decision that was not your doing. So basically, up until 10 years old, until the king at the time abdicated, and then her father took over the throne, so she was next in line for the throne. So she didn't even know she was going to be queen until she was like 10 years old. And there's a whole lot of controversy mired in that as well. That's quite a position to put someone in. That basically they have to give up their life for this public service, and they have, although they are the sort of divine ruler of, supposedly, of the UK, the realms, etc., they actually have very little power. Now, although it's a dramatization and a historical depiction, if you look at The Crown, for example, and how that depicts certain events, like the Queen didn't have a choice of who she wanted as a private secretary, for example. So something that simple, because of different traditions and different things of the way in which it sort of come about. So for the monarchy to actually change and the country to change as much as it actually did within that 70 years is quite something. Like, it's quite something. How, if you look at the ideals of the 1950s and compare them to the 1990s and compare them to now, that's a massive shift. And I'll go into that more in later videos because I think it ties into a lot of this stuff that's talked about awakening, but people don't quite understand it or make sense of it. So irregardless of what you feel about the institution, the person, had a very difficult hand that not a lot of people, very, very few people, I think would actually understand. guides and protect us. And we're saying about divine God's shadow, we are representatives of universal good and evil then. So what do you do with that role? And ultimately, the way Spirit are asking us to look at that is, yes, there were bad things that happened, but there's bad things that happen in all our lives. We all make bad decisions. But most of us are not under public scrutiny. Most of us won't have the ripples of effect from our decisions that will, vibrate across countries. So, like, yes, revere the life of this person, but they're also kind of saying, be aware that this person was no better than you, right? I remember, I'm going to show you a little clip from our Now investigations. This is a bunch of investigations we did with Paranormal Now back in 2017. This is something that Spirit said about It's Jonathan here. Goodbye, Jeanette. And it's the same thing. It's like these people are just people, right? Regardless of sort of whatever sort of thing, conspiracy theory, because I know obviously being a sort of paranormal video, a lot of people watching you guys will sort of lean more towards that sort of perspective and viewpoint. But regardless, they're still having that human experience, right? They're still having that human experience. So it's like, I'm not being apologetic here. I'm just saying, to me, that's how they viewed it from the bigger picture. Because what it creates is a representation of the mindset of which we live. We have all grown up with the ideals of being Prince Charming, or the ideals of being the princess in the castle. And there it is, depicted, represented over 70 years. That's the cost of it. That's the cost of that ideology. That's the cost of that makeup. I feel that, to me personally, that no matter what sort of scandals kind of have happened, as part of me, and this may change over time, but until I see solid sort of revelations of definitive proof that this particular person was involved in X, Y, and Z, right? I do have a lot of respect for someone that, had to bear that weight for decades. Could you say something about the reign? The 70 years that she was on the throne? although this is a time of reflection, and for many people a time of great sadness, it's a time that, for me personally, I reflect on, like, my country, my culture, how that contributed to making me me. And I also look at, like, there's several different perspectives and way we can view things. And there is a second part of this session which goes into that in more detail, which adds on to what it says about pomp and circumstance. But I'm not going to go into that in this video. I'm just going to simply say, from my perspective, for the information that we know that is public knowledge, if I was put into a position at 25 years old where I had to take on the responsibility of, I don't like the word ruling, but that's kind of what it was called, like representing, but ruling, I suppose, yeah, several nations upon this planet, would I have done any better? What's your thoughts, guys, on the responses that we've had? I'll write the responses down below so you can take a look in the description. And I'm going to do some readings over the weekend for the mid-month for each star sign. And next week I will be doing the predictions video that I mentioned earlier on here. And there's a further part of this session that I want to talk about. But I'm going to wait until after the funeral before I talk about that, because I feel it brings up certain questions that, although I don't feel disrespectful, I think would be better discussed after that event is taken place. So thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.